Too long, didn't read. Here's my rating system. Go out and buy it. Do you like being evil? Do you like being evil and playing Baldur's Gate for the 20th time or made as our op? Do you like killing in the name of Kyros? Do you like chicks who have personalities and want to kill stuff? Ditto with dudes. Are you disappointed in Torment ties of Numenera and meh about Pillars of Eternity? Well, Tyranny is the game for you. What happens when a magical demigod like Overlord brutally conquers a nation and you get to put the pieces back together in a real-time isometric Western RPG? You get Tyranny. Did you succeed at this? I think so. Tyranny showcases a war-torn, magically destroyed series of environments where its people, including some companions, agree to the subjugation in order to survive. There are only a few of these moments where we see NPCs cowering and not moving, and that adds to the world building ever so slightly, but everyone is pretty much in the same somber, fearful state. We don't really need the story of Jack and Jill and their war-torn farm being raided by soldiers, but there's one or two of those in there as well. The fear of Kyros, the ever-looming will of the Overlord, is felt throughout you, a Fatebinder who enacts the laws of the land, a kind of a newfound pilgrim sheriff, here to bring law and order to a civilization that has been torn apart. Supreme peace through subjugation will work, or you will die. And tyranny works. The protagonist is the Fatebinder agent of justice for the Overlord Kyros, and thus the boots-on-the-ground abdicator of disputes of Kyros' will. He or she is unfortunately a blank slate, enacting the role of a sheriff, so there's not much to our hero. There's no real specific antagonist, since you can change sides in one of 4 ways. You can be fighting various groups throughout the story, so no one is individually constantly trying to oppose you or go after your own goal. All is the will of Kyros. Now, this does make it a dynamic sort of series of scenarios along the main plot, but it's not as solid or as clear as it can be. Various factions like or hate you based on your choices, and you yourself question your choices, which makes this a solid RPG. It would just be much more satisfying if we had a central antagonist to challenge our choices and to compare the value of them. Instead, all of our companions will follow us no matter what we do, provided we can convince them through a proper lore, athletics, or loyalty check when you go against their interests. Since the protagonist is a member of the court, hitting you is death sentence, so nearly everyone in your party, when you don't do violent things at times, will look at you strangely or not believe the sheriff of the land wasn't violent enough in a certain scenario, which is good. You will bend to my will or perish. This is the only gameplay option. But the story kind of suffers with a somewhat vague or empty feeling because of it. But that might have been the idea. If you're going into a game where evil has won, you gotta act like it. So people who like games where you get to be a violent agent of the mighty Kyros, this is it. Yeah, they're satisfactory. They all have their desires and interests, particularly staying alive, and being subservient to you is part of that, so it all makes sense. Loyalty or fear toward you is built up throughout the choices you make and how you talk to them, giving them a very natural feeling. There's also no romance. This is a brutal, trying to survive story, not a, hey, I'm a magical god spawn with a mysterious fate story, please love me, my magical angel lady. No, there's none of that. Each companion is distinct, as are the 2 main faction leaders. They get the job done. But they're all victims of circumstance with their own brutal story to tell. The Will of Kyros! It's brutal, but not in some renegade on crack sort of way. Everything is war-torn, but it's not all some ridiculously hellish scenario. The visuals are mostly dark and dreary, with villages and entire environments blasted by large magical disasters. So yeah, it's brutal, but in a more somber tone. The somberness gives it that believable quality, that people are just trying to get by despite the wars and magical devastation. The major theme, I'd say, is subjugation versus rebellion, pride versus survival, even the holding on to the past versus accepting the future sort of bit. You see this in the occasional rebellious sub-faction who isn't too sure who's to side with now that a Fatebinder is around to lay down the law, and they generally don't take kindly to your statements. A companion might need to be fought with first, slapped around a little bit, or even killed. And there's loads of mini-bosses who just don't like Kyros. I mean, why wouldn't they? Ultimately, they will all lose to you, or rather, the Will of Kyros! There are loads of small little choices in this game, and it succeeds in this execution. There are multiple endings, multiple ways to talk to NPCs and to your companions, and in the traditional Interplay Black Isle Infinity Engine style, they are partially voice-acted. The choices you make put you in favor or disfavor of the 2 opposing factions, and sometimes their sub-factions, using a mechanic very similar to the Dragon Age's friend rivalry system. Not only does it apply to individuals, but entire groups. This is referred to as the loyalty, fear, and favor wrath systems. What's interesting is that both scales can be filled in both ways, meaning they can both be loyal and fearful, or partially favored and wrathful of you. After a certain threshold, this grants a certain gameplay benefit, usually a passive one toward that faction when fighting them, but sometimes global ones as well. This benefits your companions as you can set up combos or one-day use of unity attacks. For great evil justice, but then go to bed. There are 4 major paths throughout the bulk of the game, depending on whether you follow one of the 2 major factions supporting the rebels or not supporting anyone, also referred to as the Path of Chaos. This 4th path is purely a combat-oriented approach, as otherwise normal dialogue or diplomatic options will result in combat on site. And yes, you can do all sorts of nasty things, like kick people off towers, betray them, punish them repeatedly, and other such nasty things if you want. No, it's not some weird, sadistic simulator. This happens in individual scenes. Abuse of your power as a fate binder is necessary, but, I mean... Where was I? There are judgment calls you get to make to 2 parties who must adhere to your on-the-spot court ruling because you're the legal authority in town, as well as the jury and, more often than not, the executioner. Think of like a dating sim, but replace the word dating with like magical erupting people. Tyranny has 3 main factions. There's the 2 Archons in charge of these 2 factions, Grave and Ash of the Disfavored, and the Voices of Marat of the Scarlet Chorus, who act as Kyros's 2 main armies. You, being the Fatebinder, serve Tunon the Adjudicator, who is the Archon of Justice.
Mr. I am the law.
During the intro, after character creation, you can select an interactive series of choices to give your character a 3-year backstory on how the land was conquered, what role you played at in certain wars or cities and how those places were conquered, which factions you sided with, and how you solved obstacles. It gets played out in a battlefield-like map with a series of questions and miniature set pieces being toppled and destroyed as it goes on. This can all be automated for you, but it gives a depth of setting up what happened to your character during this time, be it taking and destroying a library, or conscripting or killing off your defeated foes. All this plays into the favor-wrath system with the factions. The environments are standard magical medieval D&D style fare, whereas the Disfavored are an exclusively magically protected heavy armor-wearing legion of soldiers. The Scarlet Chorus are a massive, random, chaotic, neutral group of crazy people. I thought they'd be completely nuts and evil, but there's sides to them that show off their humanity, even if their disposition is something of an aggressive skinhead with a bronze spear. Their leader, the Voices of Narat, is a mysterious, conniving psychopath who consumes the souls of people he just finds worthy, and he tends to crucify everyone important that gets captured and brought to him.
We could have been magnificent together, but instead, we will have your bones fashioned into a scepter, your skin knotted into a belt, and your tongue fed to crows. At least crows know the meaning of respect and gratitude.
He's nice. Once you get to know him and he doesn't want to flay you alive or eat your soul. There are times. There's always a discussion or quest about bronze and iron shortages and who should get such resources to keep the war going, the mysterious ancient spires and ancient walls and dungeons that adorn the countryside in each region. Then there's the magical edicts that Kyros uses to scare the crap out of everyone, which are also a plot point, which, when enacted throughout each of the regions, are used to subjugate people, ranging from a constant windstorm to earthquakes to instant death and constant bad luck. Do not question your god. They're just probably playing roulette or something, and I don't know, they're made-up god casino. I mean, it's not like he just rolls some dice and just kills people. It does that anyway. As with any good Western RPG, though, it comes down to the factions and how you get to deal with them. Tyranny has 2 major factions, some sub-factions, which come to about 10 major ones in total, as well as entire cities that get mentioned in the endings. No matter what you do, you will probably piss people off. And by piss people off, I mean kill them. Which is a great thing for storytelling and is also good for multiple playthroughs. Who else could you kill aside from the first guy? It's always fun. I personally found the Sages Guild a very smart move. This is a faction that is basically a magical historian group, which makes total sense in a war-torn nation, to have people trying to preserve culture and history. It's just a group that makes sense in this setting. Deus Ex Machina is unfortunately a factor. It's nothing inherently bad in usage, after all. We're talking about a magical, mysterious supreme overlord that we're all being ruled under. But I was just unimpressed by how the story progresses as a result of this inclusion, and the ending doesn't do much for it. Luckily, Kyros is never present, nor do we ever hear from the overlord. It's part of the mystery of the protagonist, which isn't all that attractive. If you were just some guy or girl doing their job, and life happens, that would have been far superior. But, of course, they had to play the mysterious power in the protagonist, and unfortunately, it's never revealed what or why that is. It's kind of frustrating, especially near the end, even if the game does have this interesting letter system where you ask questions about your nature to your fellow Fatebinders, and they give you history lessons, which is a cool gameplay mechanic, which unfortunately is only used for exposition in maybe one or two choices. The best part of any game is the storytelling. And the best part of this game is the dialogue tooltip codex options in the dialogue system. There's so many references to names and factions and groups. It does help to hover your mouse over them and get a quick paragraph on what that term means. It's very helpful. Clicking on the term brings up the codex itself. As with all Infinity Engine style games, the dialogue box just pops up and we get people talking, sometimes with voice acting, especially during the main plot points. What's neat is the portrait has been given a real-time half-body profile pose amidst a background of the setting. So if you're talking to an NPC or companion, they'll appear with their proper equipment within the portrait, acting out whatever drama of the line of delivery in that particular pose. Since the isometric camera is relatively zoomed out most of the time, this gives a certain context to the discovery of the dialogue. Though I do admit the poses along with the tiny facial expressions are either exaggerated for the sake of a particular emotion or completely ubiquitous. Nonetheless, this is an economic and neat touch, adding to the believability of a scene. Gameplay consists of the real-time with pause exploration combat, again in the Baldur's Gate Infinity Engine style vein. You get 4 people total in the party. Plays like Skyrim. There are no classes, just backgrounds during character creation, and you can switch to any skill or equipment and use that at any time. Obviously, you won't be as skilled if you're just starting from scratch, but there are trainers throughout the game of nearly every discipline who can charge you a fee. Two-handed weapons appear to be much stronger than normal weapons, although all weapon combat styles have their own skill trees so you can mix and match if you like. Magic is completely overpowered and has quite a diverse mechanic. The majority of the game is spent discovering new magic spells. Magic has no mana or spell books, and thus no cost, and everyone can do it provided their lore skill is high enough. Magic is found in 3 categories, or sigils: core, expressions, and accents. Accents are where most of the discovery of the game takes place. Exploration is the key to gameplay, then you're looking for finding a lot of accents in Tyranny. Core is what you want to do, like fire or life. Expressions are how you want to do it, like single target, over time, AoE, and accents modify the spell for more damage, more duration, larger AoE area, and other things like chances to stun, root, knockback, etc. All actions in the game have a recovery period, so there's a time to do X. If you're casting a spell, dual-wielding a basic attack, or using a skill, it requires a recovery or casting time. Thus, light armor is recommended throughout the entire game. Just sell all the heavy armor, and upgrade all your light leather armors with all the money you made from selling your heavy armors. There's a crafting system throughout. There's a research system which works in tandem with that. You can make new spells, new equipment, new potions, new poisons, you name it. It's pretty diverse. And you'll probably never touch research or build everything throughout the game in one playthrough. And they also fix the problem with Pillars of Eternity, where your teammates will clump together when attacking one target, where it looks like they're running on this spot. Instead, the AI does 2 things. It properly walks in a circle around the obstacle, like your teammate. Or 2, if that doesn't work and they can't get into attacking range within a certain time, they have this backing off routine where they try and find another path. Now, it's not perfect, but it does the job. This is a huge problem in Pillars of Eternity, and I'm happy to see it work here. So hats off to Paradox Interactive, Obsidian Entertainment. This is a purchase, and here's hoping they make a second.